The oak matrix anchor 22 challenges the very idea that growth should be a gentle, linear progression, positing instead that our greatest leaps forward require a violent rupturing of the structures we've built to protect ourselves. Joe Bandel, the architect of this system, suggests that these breaks aren't just accidents of fate, but necessary generative events that resolve deep-seated tension into a new, higher level of coherence.
It's a stark departure from the typical wellness narrative of softening or allowing. In the oak matrix, the rupturing process is viewed as a cosmic heartbeat. Bandel draws a fascinating parallel between these internal shifts and the natural daily, lunar, and solar cycles. He argues that while these ruptures happen naturally over time, there's a specific, rigorous practice for forcing them when you're looking for faster integration and expansion.
Forcing a rupture sounds inherently risky, almost counterintuitive to the goal of healing. Usually we think of a rupture as something that needs to be mended, not something we should be aiming for. How does Bandel justify this as a generative act rather than a destructive one?
He differentiates between destruction and a leap of integration. Think of it like a pressurized vessel. If the vessel is full of toxic, repressed, or trapped energy, it eventually becomes a source of stagnation. The rupture isn't meant to destroy the vessel entirely, but to break the old, rigid boundaries so that fragmented energy can be reclaimed and stabilized in a larger, more resilient framework. It's about moving from internal repair and sealing to a state of greater mobility and transmutation across different layers of consciousness.
The core of this practice involves two very intense components, the OAK energy ball meditation and sustained tantric sexual energy work. Let's break down the energy ball first. It's described as a vertical tool. You aren't just visualizing a ball of light, you're drawing it from what Bandel calls source and phase locking it at each chakra level.
Phase locking is a key technical term here, borrowed from physics and electrical engineering. It means making sure the frequencies at each energy center are perfectly synchronized, like octaves and harmonics of one another. As you draw this light down layer by layer, from the crown to the root, the energy ball acts like a magnet. It specifically targets the areas where energy is leaking or blocked, what Bandel calls toxic black energy or repressed material.
But the meditation alone isn't the force behind the rupture. That's where the tantric practice comes in. Bandel is quite specific about using intense sexual energy work, like twice daily edging no more than 2 hours apart, to build a massive polarized charge. He claims this raw life force energy is injected into the astral field to act as the catalyst.
That's the high-pressure component. You have the descending energy ball providing the structure and the magnetic pull, and then you have this explosive upward surge of sexual energy. When they collide at these phase-locked layers, it guarantees a rupture. Bandel notes that in the early stages, these ruptures manifest internally. They find the weak spots in the astral body or the central channel and effectively plug the holes, making the practitioner more hermetically contained.
It sounds like a form of psychic surgery, but it doesn't stay internal for long. The text mentions that as the internal vessel is sealed and the charge increases, the ruptures start occurring externally in the larger astral environment. This is where things get really intense, involving astral duels and explosive dreams.
He's describing a shift in awareness where you're no longer just managing your own internal state, but actively engaging with the collective shadow. As your own energetic radius expands, it disrupts other sparks or consciousnesses in the astral field. These astral battles aren't necessarily physical fights in the way we'd imagine, but rather intense energetic conflicts as your newly stabilized sovereign vehicle encounters fragmented or hostile forces in the environment.
There's a significant warning in the material, though. This isn't a practice for the casual seeker. Bandel emphasizes that forced rupturing has strong effects on the physical, emotional, and energetic systems. He makes it clear this isn't medical or psychological advice and that results vary widely. It seems he's describing a path that requires immense discipline and a high tolerance for psychological pressure.
It really highlights the left-hand path influence in his work, which focuses on personal power, sovereignty, and the use of intense, often taboo energies for spiritual evolution. The goal isn't just to feel better, it's to build a vehicle capable of holding the full spectrum of light and dark, spiritual and physical. It's about becoming what he calls a fully phase-locked sovereign vehicle.
If someone survives this rupturing process, this constant cycle of internal repair and external conflict, what is the ultimate objective? The text mentions a permanent two-way tank current between the individual and Gaia.
That's the ultimate integration. Once the channel is clear and stable all the way down, you're no longer just a disconnected spark. You become a reciprocal circuit. Light flows from source through your central channel and into the core of the Earth. In return, Gaia's grounded energy flows back up. It's a self-sustaining loop that Bandel describes as deeply empowering. It moves the practitioner from a state of seeking energy to a state of being a conduit for it.
It's interesting how he uses electrical terminology like tank current and reciprocal circuit. It suggests that Bandel views consciousness and spirituality as a literal form of physics. In his broader OAK matrix system, he actually references Dewey Larson's reciprocal general field theory, which proposes a universe of 3 dimensions of space-time and 3 of time-space, joined by the speed of light.
He's trying to build a deep science of the metaphysical. By framing spiritual growth as a process of building voltage and overcoming resistance, he makes it seem less like a mystical mystery and more like a technical challenge. The hell, he describes in his other writings, isn't a place of fire, but a state of high voltage where nothing happens, where the pressure is unbearable because there's no flow. The rupture is the lightning strike that breaks that tension.
And that tension is seen as generative. In the OAK matrix, breakdown isn't failure, it's the exact pressure needed for the next leap. He uses the metaphor of the grove and the womb, suggesting that life is constantly waiting to be born out of these moments of crisis. It's a very proactive stance on suffering and conflict.
It shifts the focus from avoiding pain to utilizing it. If you view every rupture as an opportunity to add awareness points and expand your stable radius, you stop fearing the breakdown. You start working with it consciously. It's about building a vehicle that is not just resilient, but actually thrives on the storm, much like the oak tree that gives the system its name.
The language he uses is quite provocative, especially terms like forced integration and injected sexual energy. It feels like he's intentionally pushing back against the toxic brainwashing of modern moderation and safety. He's advocating for a life lived at maximum capacity, even if it means breaking the current version of yourself to get there.
Bandel is clearly interested in the dark, electric tensions of existence. His work as a translator of early 20th century German horror and fantasy, authors like Heinz Ewers, seems to bleed into this. There's a gothic, almost mechanical intensity to his vision of the astral field. It's not just a place of peace, it's a place of hierarchy, elements, and electron rings that must be mastered.
We should talk more about the technicality of the energy ball. He says it's phase-locked layer by layer from the top down. Why the top down? Most traditions, like Kundalini, emphasize starting at the root and moving up.
That's a crucial distinction. Bandel argues that by drawing source light down first, you create a stable container for the raw, volatile sexual energy that will eventually be pulled up. If you start from the bottom without that downward structure, the energy might just scatter or become destructive. The descending ball acts like a stabilizer. It identifies the weak spots and leaking areas before you pump in the high-pressure charge. It's a safety mechanism, even if the process itself is described as forced.
So the healing happens through containment. Each rupture seals a hole. It reminds me of his sponge method in other parts of the OAK matrix, where he talks about how most people are clogged sponges saturated with old, stagnant energy. You have to squeeze the sponge, create that pressure, to make room for something new. Anchor 22 seems like the advanced high-voltage version of that squeeze.
The ultimate goal is sovereignty. In Bandel's view, a person who is full of holes or who can't handle their own intensity is easily manipulated by external forces, whether those are societal norms or astral entities. By going through the rupturing process, you're essentially building a suit of energetic armor that is simultaneously a high-bandwidth antenna. You're becoming a self-contained yet universally connected engine of awareness.
It's a demanding path for sure. The idea that one would deliberately seek out astral duels or explosive dreams to test their coherence is a far cry from the usual spiritual goals of peace and tranquility. It's growth through conflict.
But he argues it's the fastest way. In his view, the cosmic heartbeat doesn't wait. We can either drift along with the natural cycles, experiencing ruptures when life forces them upon us, or we can take the initiative and drive the process ourselves. For Bandel, the choice is between being a passive observer of your own evolution or its conscious architect.
That architecture involves moving from the internal to the external. The text says the process moves from internal repair and sealing to external engagement and conflict, and finally to greater mastery, mobility, and transmutation ability between layers. This suggests that the astral field is a place you can eventually navigate with total autonomy.
Transmutation is the operative word there. It's the ability to change the state of energy, to take the raw, chaotic input of the world and transform it into something stable and useful for your own growth. By the time you reach the stage of the tank current with Gaia, you're no longer just surviving the environment. You're an active participant in the planetary energy exchange.
It all comes back to that central reflection that we shouldn't fear the rupture. The chaos and breakdown are not the end, but the birth pangs of the next level of wholeness. It's a powerful, if challenging, perspective on the nature of personal evolution.
And it requires a fundamental shift in how we view tension. Instead of seeing tension as something to be released or avoided, we see it as a nutrient. It's the fuel for the leap. As the closing of Anchor 22 reminds us, the current will flow as it will, but the practitioner's job is to ensure they are a clear and stable vessel for that flow.
The idea that our greatest breakthroughs are born from our most intense ruptures is a profound way to reframe the struggles of growth, urging us to find the generative potential in every breakdown. If you found this analysis of the Oak Matrix useful, please share this episode with someone who might benefit from a new perspective on integration.